SBOMs done the right way. Let's switch over. Presented by Michael Messner and Benedikt Kühne. Where they show us how their Embark tool can help generate SBOMs. So, welcome them on stage, please.
Sure. Thank you very much. So welcome to SBOMs the right way. So everything we are talking about during the next hour is based on the SBOM generator and firmware analysis environment Embark. Embark is a fully automated SBOM and firmware analyzer, firmware security analyzer, sorry. It is open source, and that's the best thing on Embark. So right after our talk, you can go straight to our GitHub repo, download Embark, start building SBOMs, getting a better understanding of the supply chain you're dealing with, analyzing firmware, and getting a better security perspective on the things that are relevant for you. I'm Mike, this is Benedikt, and together we are testing pens. No, we are penetration testers at Siemens Energy, focused on product penetration testing, so we are doing some, let's say, basic hardware analysis, basic firmware analysis, basic pen testing, and things like this. And beside this, we are maintaining the whole Embark ecosystem, which means we eat our own bugs for breakfast, and we eat the SBOMs for lunch. The Embark ecosystem is nowadays quite huge, and we have different user groups. On the one hand, we have the non-professional users, which let's call it hobbyists or kiddies. This is a quite important user group because they're using Embark in ways that we have never thought about it, and they have usually some time to report bugs. Nevertheless, they are not part of this talk today. We are starting with the externals, which means with penetration testers, external penetration testers, external security researcher, and then we move on with a little bit more to the internal stuff, to the vendor internal stuff, we will see in a few moments. The security researchers and the penetration testers have one thing in common. They are usually testing things where they have no real access to, which means they have no access to the source code, they have no access to internal development information or to the developers by itself, which results in a black box testing approach. Nevertheless, the goal is always to move away from this black box testing approach to a more gray boxish analysis style. And the obvious possibility there is to use the firmware of the thing or the binaries of the thing that you're analyzing to get more insights, to understand the inner workings of the thing you're analyzing. How to get the firmware? Easiest way, just go to the website of the vendor, download the firmware, and you're ready to go. But in a lot of cases, there is no firmware available on the vendor website, or the firmware is behind a paywall. So what can we do there? We dig a little bit deeper. We start with analyzing the hardware, reverse engineering the hardware, identifying debug access, and in some cases also desoldering the flash storage and extracting the firmware from the flash storage. Usually this will end up with access to the firmware. And from this point on, you can do static analysis, dynamic analysis with the firmware. You can try to understand the inner workings of the product you're analyzing. And you can generate now the SBOM. With the SBOM, you can query databases like a CVE database. With this query, you have the known vulnerabilities. And the known vulnerabilities you can now use to query exploit databases, like a Metasploit database or something like this. At the end, an exploit is much better than 1,000 CVEs. And now you know if your device is vulnerable to a known vulnerability. But there are usually some limitations. It starts with reproducibility. The tool chain that is usually used in analyzing firmware is highly fragile. So every tester is using different version, different patch levels, is scripting around bugs, patching around bugs, and so on and so on. So at the end, we need something like Kali Linux for firmware analysis. We need some automation framework that is doing all of the extraction stuff fully automated, that is doing configuration analysis automatically, binary analysis, and so on and so on. Yeah, and for sure, SBOM building, not just for the SBOMs, or for the source SBOMs via metadata, but what is if we do not have a package manager? We also need the SBOM. We also need an overview of known vulnerabilities. And finally, if you're not the only pen tester in your team, so we're talking about collaboration, about the central management of a central firmware analysis system, do not waste time. So we need to do it all automatically in the background, and every penetration tester should have the same environment. So we are struggling with all of these things in my team. So Benedikt, can you help me a little bit?
Exactly. Pen testing is a lengthy process, as some of you might know. For people like us, for professionals, there might be two main reasons. To test a product, maybe a device or something else, it is, for one, it's fun, and for two, for us at least, it pays the bills. And if we go through this external process, this pen tester process from the top, it's a simplification, of course, but you see this, the side, for us at least, it's that we get what the end user also gets. We get a manual, we get a box, and maybe even a technician to plug something in. That's it. And in some cases, you might actually get a firmware or the software in that box, let's say in that box or even online, or you don't get it. So it's just in that product, in that hardware. So there's two ways to get it. Either you get it directly or you have to go through other means, as Mike already mentioned. Once you have something, once you have a software, firmware from a product, you have to kind of make it readable. So there's a bunch of options, there's a bunch of ways in which you could get a software. It might be decoded, might be encrypted, so you might have to decrypt it with an actual key. Then you might have to extract certain things within it or the whole thing, then throw away the PDFs, you know, menus and stuff. Or you might have simple formatting issues where you're like, okay, I can kind of read it, but it's not in a way where I can then throw it into a tool. So I have to do some pre-processing there. Next step would be analyzing. That's a rather broad term. That could include basically anything you do with it. It's throwing it into tools, doing manual stuff, Ghidra, all the stuff, binwalk, everything. Our tool, Ember, that's an automated analyzer, right? And then in the end, you always, as any pen tester, you have to do a report. That's always fun. I don't know. I think in our team we have one guy who actually enjoys it. Besides the point.
Is it you?
Not really, right? So those two, so the report, yes. That is something you also kind of can do automatically, so generate the stuff that you actually found in there. You go through, like you have some versions identifiers that you found for analyzation, and then you have like, okay, so this version has this known vulnerability, and that's part of my report saying, okay, this one is in there. That's also where our Ember and then Embark tool comes in. So we do automated stuff. Of course, I'm not coming to you and then doing the stuff manually. That is, so those two steps, analyzing and then creating a report you can actually use to then further go in and do manual stuff or just throw it to the boss. So how does this process in an example look like? We have a black box. Interesting black box. I don't know if you see those anymore. It's just an example. So Mike might show up in our lab and then just say, okay, this one is a new one, so pen test that thing. Like, okay, do you have a firmware for that? Do you have anything other than that thing, or do we just have to, do magic? So let's say we have an example where this box doesn't have anything, we just have a black box. Mike found that thing somewhere, and then the boss up there said, do a pen test on it. And we don't have any vendor website where we have a firmware or software access to anything. What do we do? Open the thing up, look at the hardware. In this example, I'm just taking a research project we did, I don't know, 4 years back. It's just a simple example, right? This is a home router, you might think, unknown brand. If you open it, you have some cables, a heatsink, you see gray cables, you see black cables. Once you take those off, let's see, do we have a flash? I mean, I have to find the software. I need the actual flash where the stuff is. I don't need the chips, I don't need memory, it doesn't matter. What do we have on the front? We have networking ports, Ethernet. Then we have two circuitries for the 2.4 gigahertz and the 5 gigahertz wireless. Then we have the main SoC, also not really interesting. I mean, I can check what it is, but I want the flash, I want the software. This is the memory. Maybe some of you might already see something very interesting, but let's find the flash first. Flash is on the back. Looks like an easy target. We actually have some soldering pads we could attach stuff to, so we don't even have to desolder it. That's good. So no need for desoldering station and then doing a bunch of more work. We could just actually boot it and try to read it out directly. As some of you might already seen, we're luckier still in this case. There is some debugging interface in the front of the board, namely a UART down there. So we don't even have to, we're even luckier, so we don't even have like JTAG and then look for JTAG stuff, which is even more complicated and might look like this in some cases. So microwire and then to the next thing, and then you put it into your favorite tool and then into your PC. No need for doing that. It's simple. It's basically 2 cables, 3 cables, the ground, of course, and then attach your tool and then see what happens. In this case, this is actually my favorite example because it's very easy. You had a bootloader on that, and that bootloader was easy to use to dump the whole image. That is, of course, best case. So there was no resin around it. There were no stacked chips. There were no disabled interfaces and stuff. So this is definitely not a hardened device. It's a very cheap device. But since we were in luck, and then, as you can see, ETA 2 days, yeah, it was like overnight. Overnight we had a blob, a firmware blob. What is a firmware blob, right? A blob is everything. Could be anything, could be everything. So we can do an entropy graph with our favorite tool, binwalk. See that there's actually something in there, right? So we have squiggly up there at 1. So we have archive or something, and then we can look into what binwalk actually tells us. Like, is there Linux in there? In this case, yes. In some other cases, you might see that you're okay. So I have an instruction set. That's all I have. So I know there's like, okay, this is a binary something. So we don't even have an OS sometimes. Sometimes you have the whole file system in there. Identifying things like instruction set is always a good thing. That's something we need later. That's something Ember also does. Great. Then yes. What else? Unix. Stuff like that, right? How big is it? Looks like a Linux system. That's great. Throw it into Ember. Well, the problem now is, as Mike mentioned, collaboration. So I have the firmware now, I have the blob, and then I throw it into Ember, and then what does the team do, though? So do I throw that to everyone, and then everyone does their own analysis, or what's happening there? USB sticks. That's very ancient, I don't know, but something you still see, or then you like, okay, same thing with Dropbox, or you throw it into your cloud and stuff, and then everyone has to upload, download it, whatever. It's pretty annoying still, because then you have like different versions across people. Like some people use this, some people use that, different versions of Ember maybe, and then the results might differ, the actual report might differ. You have like different SBOMs, and from different SBOMs you get different reports of known vulnerabilities because somebody forgot to update their CVE database. That's something where we were like, okay, let's build Embark, let's put it into a web service. The web service does everything. How does Embark look like? Front dashboard, always the best part where you say like, come in manager, this is our tool. That's the shiny things, and all the other stuff that's actually interesting to the whole team is somewhere else. So you have pointy things where you can say, okay, this many firmwares we have so many CVE data, CVEs that identified in the stuff we tested. We can see how hard the server is actually crunching in the background, like resource management and stuff. Maybe I click here. And then we have a updater menu. That is an improvement over the team has different versions and stuff, because now we have a central backend. The central backend does everything. It's not in your room, it is in a server room, and it is the same version for everyone. So someone clicks analyze, and then everyone gets the same result. You can update it. It's always like CVE update down there. You can update the database how often you like. And then we throw our firmware in there. That's basically it. Drag and drop. We try to make it as easy as possible. I don't think it gets more easy. Then if you really want to, there are some options you can set or not set. You can just click analyze or don't. There's, for example, this SBOM thing that we're talking about today. So there's an SBOM mode where you're like, okay, I only care about the SBOM. Maybe kinda, so the known vulnerabilities kinda, but all the other things, all the things that a pen tester cares about is not something I care about. Then you tick that box, say analyze, that's it. You have an expert, experts like Mike and me might use that option, and then you have the option of defining the device if you are someone who actually has a device with different firmware versions. So if you're tracking a device over time, how is the security posture looking over time? So I have version 1, version 2, is it better, is it worse, is there more CVEs, is there less CVEs, how is it looking? That's where you would use that. In the end, once it's analyzed, that's what the guy who analyzed things will see, or the whole team will see. Some of the team might be able to access it if it's restricted, if it's not restricted and stuff. But that's how the dashboard looks like. All the things that you typed in there, and then labels and an action menu. The action menu is looking mostly like this. And for the SBOM guy who just cares about the SBOM, that's where I go. I say, get SBOM, and then that's where that journey would end. For guys like us, pen testers, we might actually want to see, okay, what did we find there? What do I not have to do manually? That's where I go. Detail view, how many CVEs are in there? Is there actually something found in there? How does it look like? And then in this case, busy box stuff. Some of them actually have like some exploit data you might want to check out. Yeah. How does it look on the internal side though? So the product owner and stuff.
Okay. So now we move on to the internal, to a vendor internal, we mean. Why we have talked this lengthy about the externals is because also if you're within a company, within a product development company, you will see that in a lot of cases you act like an external. Think about products that you're using in your network, in your solutions, somewhere that are critical for you or your final product, then you probably will perform penetration tests as an external on a third party. This means, again, you do not have a lot of internal insights, you do not have the source code, you're acting like an external penetration tester. Additionally, you probably will test your own products that your company is developing, which means in this case you have access to more data, you probably have access to debugging interfaces, you have access to the firmware, you do not need to go to the hardware extra mile. You can talk to the developers. Oh, the developers also have some needs. So developers need some kind of a quality gate. So they would have some automated quality gate in the build process where they can just push up the build firmware and then they get the results back if they're using outdated software components, if they're using some firmware issues, something like this. And during the last year, we have seen a massive need for SBOMs, and we will see in a few moments the root cause of this. But also these people, let's talk about third-party vendor management, for example, that are mainly interested in the final SBOM, but not in firmware analysis results. So, yeah, with this said, let's talk about SBOMs. Oh, no, let's talk about bombs, without the S. So, let's go to Wikipedia. What is a bomb? A bomb is a bill of material. And according to Wikipedia, it is a list of raw materials, sub-assemblies, components, parts, and the quantities of each needed to manufacture an end product. And a bomb may be used for communication between different parties. And in German language, we call it a Stückliste. And we have to deal with Stücklisten or bombs everywhere. Sorry. Also in the software field. And the S does not stand for security, it stands for software. So we are talking about software bill of materials. And this is a formal record containing the details and supply chain relationships of various components used in building software. This means if you're using some third-party components, these third-party components are in your SBOM. If these third-party components are open source, they are in the SBOM. If these components are closed source, they are in the SBOM. But your own source code is not in the SBOM. Your build parameters, your configuration is not in the SBOM. But, now, usually also vulnerability information is not in the SBOM because this is something that changes over time massively. But you can include it into the SBOM. This is called VEX, Vulnerability Exchange. Probably the most important note on SBOMs is that SBOMs only define the structure, content, and interpretation between parties, but it does not guarantee the quality of the data. So just because you're getting an SBOM from somewhere, this does not mean the SBOM is complete, and it does not mean the SBOM is correct. It is just an SBOM. So how does such an SBOM look like? Every SBOM that you will see in our talk is generated by Embark. And here you can see a header of a Cyclone DX SBOM. There is also another standard, SPDX, available for simplification. Today we are talking only about Cyclone DX. There are a few required fields or mandatory fields, like the BOM version, the BOM format, and also which component is under test. In an Embark SBOM, you will find a lot of further metadata. Our goal is to produce an SBOM that is highly reproducible. So you always get an overview of which backend version was used, so you can definitely reproduce this SBOM later on. If you dig a little bit deeper into the SBOM, you will find the component section. Within the component section, we have again some mandatory fields, some optional fields. But usually you will find definitely the name and the version of the components. You will often find some identifier like a CP identifier or a PUL. And within an Embark SBOM, you find a huge properties section. The properties section is completely optional, but it makes the whole SBOM much more readable and reproducible. So in this case, you can find the source path, the source of truth, which means where has Embark found this identifier, or what is the source of the whole component entry. Then some add-ons like a confidence level, if we know about dependencies, especially if you're talking about package managers, then you will find the dependencies, and also if there are other paths affected. Everything included in the SBOM, and usually it should be quite easy to reproduce this entry. So now we know what is an SBOM, how does it look like, but why do we need it? Think about a company that has multiple products in different versions. And it has some central database where all of the Embark SBOMs are fed in. So now you're able to query the central SBOM database, and you will find which component is used in which product. And if there are some vulnerabilities out there, and you need to check if your products are affected, you can now go to your central database and query this database, and you're ready to go. And with these details, you're now able to perform very targeted vulnerability management, or at the end, you're now able to perform vulnerability management, because before you were blind and you cannot manage something that you do not know. So in this, now we are able to perform vulnerability management, we are able now to perform third-party risk management and software. We understand much better our software supply chain now. But it is not only useful for us, it is essential for us. Because of the Cyber Resilience Act, and this Cyber Resilience Act affects all products with digital elements. And now think about which products are not affected. Not a lot. Most of the products are affected somehow. And with this, we are now able to understand the software supply chain, all of the dependencies. We now know which components are used. We are able to identify known vulnerabilities. We are now able to remediate these known vulnerabilities, and so on and so on. And one little thing that is also quite interesting is that products with digital elements are not allowed to, vendors are not allowed to bring these products on market with known vulnerabilities. And how to check this? Once again, with SBOMs. The one or the other vendor now says, okay, this is very short term, so we are not able to fulfill this. No, we now know since 2022 about the Cyber Resilience Act that it will come, and it will come next year. From 2026 on, the first part of the Cyber Resilience Act gets affected, and we need to have SBOMs, because otherwise we are not able to perform vulnerability management and incident reporting. The whole Cyber Resilience Act gets effective in 2027, by the way. And yeah, think about twice about not fulfilling the Cyber Resilience Act, because that could get quite expensive. It starts with 15 million euros penalties, and it goes up to 2.5% of the global revenue of your company. So think about twice. But what are the, what are the challenges of generating SBOMs? So if you think about a completely new developed thing, which you're starting developing on a green field with a modern framework, modern language, then it's quite easy, because the standard is building a source SBOM from metadata and you're ready to go. So we do not cover this in our talk, we cover the reality. So metadata, so source SBOMs are only partly available probably from the new stuff. We have to deal with binary blobs, with legacy things, with firmware, with third-party components, third-party libraries, and so on and so on. So we have to deal with a highly hybrid environment, the so-called brownfield environment. And yeah, it could be that easy. Think about your Linux distribution that you most like, Probably it is some Debian-based or something else. Keep it simple, we're talking about a Debian-based system. There's the package manager. Everything is handled via apt-get or apt or dpkg. So the world is easy, but in reality it is just a little piece, because you're installing stuff via Python pip, you're dealing with Rust packages, with npm, and so on and so on. So on a usual system, you're not just dealing with their package manager, you're dealing with multiple package managers. And if you think about other basic operating systems, other managed systems, then you have RPM, APKs, IPKs, and so on and so on. Your SBOM tooling needs to understand all of them. And then I have heard rumors that there are vendors that are just bypassing package managers. They're just hard copying their binaries, libraries, configurations into the file system, and then they're ready to go for shipping. This is a big problem because the package manager now gets blind, so we have blind spots, and we need to handle this somehow. So we need to check which files are handled by the package manager and what is the reality on the file system. What are the real files? And then we need to cross-correlate this and analyze the not package manager handled files also somehow, without metadata again. Then we have the dependency tree that is quite easy to build if we have a package manager. But it gets a little bit more complicated if we think about cross-package manager dependencies, if we think about binaries. And finally, again, you cannot analyze what you're not able to see. So if your binary blob is you're not able to extract your binary blob, and you are not able to look into your binary blob, then you're not able to analyze it. So you need to have some extraction mechanisms, some very powerful extraction mechanisms. You need to analyze package manager also, as well as non-package manager areas. And then if there are some further binary blobs, you need to extract them again and look into them. Probably there are further binaries, probably there's another file system. So some recursive analysis is definitely needed. Now I will hand over to Benedikt again.
Yes. We're doing a short demo. This demo is set up to be for the guy who is, for example, managing a product. So you're in charge of a product and you have some, let's say, hardware, like some device that is a bit legacy maybe, and then you're tasked to build an application on top of it. So you have guys, you have developers, they have state-of-the-art frameworks and everything, and you get your SBOM over there, but you don't know what's in the device, what's already in there. You have no idea. And you're the guy who only wants the SBOM. I don't care about the other things. I don't need a pen tester. I don't want to pen test anything. What do I want actually? I have a GitLab, let's say, and I have workflows and everything. I just want a pipeline. I want something to do the job for me and just simply cruise along. That's where we had the idea of using an API, because for some people, even the drag and drop and things is still too complicated and it's not really viable for state-of-the-art development workflows. So you get an API key, you can copy-paste. This is per user, of course, so you have access restrictions applying there too. And then you can put it into whatever you want. Let's say it's GitLab. In this case, I just used Postman because some of you might be familiar with that. In the bottom, we always have the curl equivalent. We have 4 API calls. It's very simple. We have one for checking that the API is working, that the key is working. Second one is this one. You just upload and go. That is basically it. You put your file in there. You have your API key, and then you get a success and an ID back. This is an UUID. This is unique. That's how the first one looks. And then if you want to know if the analysis is still taking some time, when do I get my SBOM, stuff like that, depending on how you structure your workflows or your pipeline, how is it looking, and you can check over time how the analysis is progressing. This is what the status report is doing, so you just use the UUID in there. Again, up top, Postman, I don't know if someone might be familiar, and then curl is the simple way, just down there. Then, this is in curl, if you just query it over time, you might get, percentage there, okay, takes a bit. There we are. Once it's finished, we have a success. Once we have a success, you get from the status report, you get an actual download URL. You could use that. You could use it manually. The SBOM only guy doesn't care. I don't care about the report. I don't need a download zip. I don't need all the things that the embark is doing. I just need the SBOM. That's why I'm here for. That's where we have our fourth option is API SBOM. That's basically it. You could use that without using the status. You just take the UUID you got from the first request where you uploaded it, put that in there. Once the SBOM is finished, you get a response over here with OK, and that's your raw SBOM. That's it. I don't think it gets much simpler, and it doesn't really get more powerful. That's how the raw SBOM looks like. It's JSON. That's our final example of the SBOM we built with Embark and Embark. How do other tools do that, though? What did we find, Mike?
So during the last year, we have analyzed multiple tools in this environment, and some commercial tools, some open source tools, which build SBOMs on the other on the one hand, and we always checked also for some firmware analysis stuff, because that's the origin where we are from. And we have seen weird things there. So you can pay a lot of money for a really ugly and non-reproducible SBOM. On the other hand, there is also an open source environment. For example, we have seen Sift. Sift is, let's say, the current top dog out there. It is a CLI tool, a highly optimized CLI tool, which is very easy to install. It is very fast, lightweight, but SBOM only. It supports many package managers, and the SBOM is looking really good. It is also very reproducible. But if you need a little bit more, for example, if you want to check it against vulnerabilities or a CV database, you need some post-processing. If you want to have extraction included, you need pre-processing, and you're running definitely into troubles if you have some hidden binaries in binary stuff. And finally, Sift is very optimized for source SBOMs. So they rely heavily on metadata, and they fail completely if they do not have any package manager or something like this. And now we have the challenger Embark. Embark again is also a CLI tool, but as we have seen before, we have a web interface and an API. It is quite easy to install, but it is a really big beast. So it is not something like pip install Sift, so you definitely need to go to the GitHub repo, download the repo, and start the installation, and it will take a little bit of time. And you need some hard drive space. It is not as fast as Sift, but we are also able to do we are able to do extraction, we are able to do firmware analysis. We can also match against CVE databases, against exploit databases, and this is everything can be included into your SBOM. And finally, the whole extraction process is part of the Embark framework, and also the binary analysis. So we do not only rely on the package manager, we also identify the parts that are not managed by a package manager, and we do not just ignore it. And with this, we do not have the blind spots of other tools. So, some further observations of all of these tools that we have analyzed. Yeah, you can pay a lot of money for a lot of false positives. So, we have seen commercial solutions that cost 100,000 euros a year and brings you 20% of false positives, which means false components. And your remediation process will hunt for vulnerabilities in components that you do not have in your product. And this is definitely the best way to make new friends in your company. Absolutely. Yeah, the other thing is, as mentioned before, blind spots. You cannot manage what you do not know about it. So every component that is missed is a blind spot, and you are probably running into problems with your remediation process. And one problem that we all have, also Embark and all of the commercials, all of the other open source toolings that we have seen, are common identifiers like CP, PUL. This is in a lot of cases a big mess. So, yeah, don't trust your SBOM, challenge it, and we have the tooling for you. Thank you very much. That's it.
Okay.
Are there any questions out there?
Already some questions, as you can see. Let's start here.
Thank you. I just checked your web page and saw the last release is 1 year ago. Do you see that feature complete, or is there a roadmap? Or
No, the last release was, I think, 2 days ago.
okay, then it's not yet posted on the website.
We have released it on, I think, on Tuesday, so it should be out there of Embark. But we will check it afterwards, after the talk, yes. Otherwise, check it today in the evening. There's a release released on Tuesday, so it should be there.
On our side, it shows on GitHub. I don't know where you check. That's the main question.
We can take a look after the questions.
Yeah, thanks. Do you have also discussions with the BSI from Germany regards dependency tracker? So I heard that they want to collaborate more with the dependency tracker. This is the first question.
So no, there are currently no discussions with the BSI.
Okay, and the second question, how do you handle the different kind of firmwares like RTOS, all the different Linux environments and so on?
Mm-hmm. On the one hand, Linux operating system give plenty of possibilities to do analysis, to gather data, do static dynamic analysis. So the best results with Embark you get on a Linux operating system. And there it doesn't matter if it's a Debian or a D-Link router or some OT device. This doesn't matter. If we talk about real-time operating system like VxWorks or something like this, then we hopefully are able to identify them. If there are some well-known libraries also used in there, then there is also the chance to identify them, but the whole analysis possibilities are much less than on a Linux operating system.
You don't care about the POL and so on, because this is mostly more strict and not every package manager have these POLs available. So you did not care about.
You're talking about the POL identifier?
Yes.
Yeah, we are trying to guess a useful identifier, but yeah, that was the last point, that it's a big mess then, in a lot of cases, and this is definitely something that need to be handled in the further process where you're using your SBOM later on, or remove it completely. Yes.
Thank you for the talk. 2 questions from my side. Can I throw directly a Docker image into Embark?
A Docker image?
Yes.
It should work.
Okay.
If not, give us feedback.
Yeah.
Depends on how big it is. That's always
4
something.
GB, 5 GB.
Okay, so our normal limit with file uploads is 4 gigs, because I always say, beyond 4 gigs is a bit much, right?
Okay. And the second question, on a few slides you stated that the BSI wants more or doesn't like this. Can you elaborate a little bit what the BSI want for the SBOM?
The requirements for from the BSI.
Yeah.
So Yeah, this would probably take a little bit too long, but the Cyclone DX specification that I've shown in the slides are very limited. So the required areas are very limited, and the BSI needs much more. So the Cyclone DX, for example, in the component section only needs the name, but it does not require the version. But from the BSI, as far as I can remember, you also have the requirement for the version. And I think it's something about the hashes, it's the same that it is required from the BSI, but you need to go into the details there.
Okay, thank you very much. Is it planned to also support other SBOM standards in Ember, or just Cyclone DX?
It is an open source project, so if you want something else,
sure.
we are working with Cyclone DX, and we are quite happy. But we are here to help if you have other needs, and we will be definitely interested in supporting other people that want something else, yes.
Okay, thank you.
There is some question over there.
I once played around with the FACT framework. This is a soft solution developed by the Fraunhofer Institute, also open source. And it seems to be a very similar solution. And so it also automatically unpacks the firmware, passes the binaries, extracts strings and the version information, and throws it against the CVE database. So my question is, if you know that solution, and what's the difference to your solution, the advantage?
Yeah. We also have a good contact to some of the FACT developers. They have developed FACTs, and we Ember just two different things for nearly the same tasks. Try it out and use the best option for you. So no further questions. And thank you very much. And enjoy the rest of the Troopers.
Yeah. So thank you very much.